All these voices. All these voices.
They're mine. They're not yours. You had no right to them when you were alive, and you have no right to them when you're dead. Did he say Hershey? That's what it sounded like. Good, you know who I am. And you know I'm not playing. You're going to let those women go. In Jesus' name, you're going to let those women go.
Is there a demon here watching us right now? Watching us right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr. With me, as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm pretty good. How you doing tonight?
First of all, it's good to be back, man. It's been a couple weeks. My wife had shoulder surgery, and she hasn't been able to do much of anything. Her whole one side, her arm was just dead for like a week, and she hasn't been able to do really anything with it. So I've been taking care of her and off of everything. I've even barely been on social media or anything. I've been just doing the good husband thing for a while. So it's great to be back. Tonight we're going to have a fun show. We're going to be talking about another one of these crazy stories that has taken the internet by storm. I've seen countless videos on this on Instagram and on Facebook and some people even on YouTube talking about it. So let me tell you the story. It is the twisted tale of a lady named Felicity Marmaduke. Okay, now according to what they're all saying, this lady worked at a morgue. Okay, she was a mortuary assistant or something like that. And her job was to wash the bodies. That's what the story is. And apparently, she was taking certain liberties with a lot of these bodies, about 50 of them actually, where she was actually having intercourse with them. And you might say, well, how the hell is that even possible? They're dead. You know, there's always been that joke about, rigor mortis setting in and all that kind of stuff. But apparently, according to the science, sometimes there can be an erection in a man after he dies, depending. So the story goes that she was doing that and ended up pregnant because of it. And they did a DNA test, and it went back to one of the people in the morgue that was dead, was the father. Somebody she had never met before. He died in an auto accident. He wasn't even from Kansas City, which is where she was from. He was from somewhere else and was just passing through and got in a car wreck and ended up in her morgue. So then somehow the police find out. They never really say how the police found out about it, but somehow they found out. And they charged her with all these different things because apparently having sex with dead people isn't against the law in Kansas City, Missouri. Kind of weird, but it's not against the law, supposedly. So they got her for like indecent liberties with a dead person or something like that. A bunch of different charges like that. And put her in jail. And the next part of this story that they told was that she decided she was suing the family of the deceased man for child support because she ended up pregnant. So that's the story everybody's been talking about online. And this one, like, we've done a lot of these kind of things to where there's a story that's super popular and everybody's talking about it. And so we kind of dig into it and find out what the truth is on it and if it even happened or if it's just all BS. And this one was interesting. I was like, wow, that's a crazy ass story. And there was several alarm bells that went off for me in this story where I was like, wait a minute, this can't be true. You know what I mean? Something smells fishy here. The first one was, depending on who's telling the story, the lady's name is either Felicity Marmaduke, which is a ridiculous name, or it's like Jenny Furrows or some shit like that. So that's the first alarm bell that went off for me is, wait a minute, there's two different names. What's this chick's actual name? You know what I mean? Why does she have two different names? The second thing was the fact that she got pregnant. Now that's a strange thing. Now I know scientifically that a man can have an erection after death. But in order for that sperm to even be viable, it has to be harvested in a 36-hour window from the time of death. Otherwise, it's not viable, and you can't make a baby with it. We know that because sometimes a man will die, and his wife will get the sperm, request it, and they'll go get it within that 36-hour window so that it can be viable. Anything after that, not viable. Okay, so you might say, well, maybe, this incident took place within that 36-hour window. But the problem is a dead man can't orgasm. That's just not possible because he's not alive. Maybe he had some seminal leakage or something like that that caused the pregnancy, maybe, but he can't have an actual orgasm like a living person would. Okay, so that was another alarm bell that went off for me. So I started looking into this story, and I tracked it down to the actual original source of the story. It was like Weekly World News Tonight or some shit like that was the name of the site. And when you go and you look on it, and you actually look at the article, and you scroll, you see that this is one of those satire sites. It's not like a real news site. It's one of those ones that always has made up stories. And it even says on it that all the people, places, events, everything that takes place in this story are completely fictional. That this is a satire website and that nothing that they're printing here is true. So that kind of right off the bat lets you know exactly what you're dealing with. You're dealing with another one of these situations to where people hear some crazy story, do absolutely no research at all on it. They don't look into it at all. And they just run with it and say, oh, that'll make great content. And they make a video. Okay. Now, I'm not down on them for that because, look, here I am making a video about this exact same story. Yes, I'm debunking it, but still, it is good content. It's a hilarious story. And it definitely gets your attention. But this one is BS. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It didn't happen. There is no lady by that name. She did not take liberties with a dead person and get pregnant. None of that happened. That being said, that kind of stuff does happen quite a bit, believe it or not. In the research for this show, I ran across multiple stories of people that worked in mortuaries and morgues who were doing stuff like that. Maybe not to that extent, but there's all kinds of weirdos and perverts out there that do some pretty nasty stuff. So that's kind of disturbing. That's not a good thing. But this one's not true. But I did come across something else that is very interesting that I wanted to talk about on this episode too. And this is a 100% real thing. And what's funny is this kind of almost sounds more crazy than the original story, right? Like if you had the story I'm about to tell you plus this one side by side, you might pick the story of the woman getting pregnant by a corpse over what I'm about to tell you as far as what is true and what isn't. It's something called coffin birth. And this is a real thing, and it's crazy. Basically, when they went to exhume bodies in the past that were buried before the time of like embalming and modern mortuaries and everything, sometimes if it's a woman, they will find her skeleton and then a little baby skeleton in there too, like down between her legs. And they freak out. They're like, oh my God, this woman gave birth after she died in the coffin. And the baby died in there. That's what they're thinking. And that is a real thing. Coffin birth actually exists. But I want to explain it a little bit because I did a deep dive on this one because I said, what the hell is that? I never heard of that before. And I wanted to know everything I could know about it. So in almost every case of coffin birth, what happens is the baby isn't born alive and dies. The baby's dead already. And the mother's dead. And the baby is in the mom. And what happens as decomposition takes place and putrefaction takes place, all the gases swell everything. And the body starts to collapse in and the gases expand. So what it does is it pushes everything out. Okay, it pushes all the liquids, all the solids, everything out of the body. That's why you end up with fecal matter, you end up with urine, you end up with all kinds of goo and ooze coming out of you when you're dead. Same thing with the baby. The baby's in there. The pressure of those gases and the body collapsing down is like a perfect storm that is pushing it slowly out. Okay, you probably could have done without the visual. I apologize. But it is pushing the baby out. And I said in almost every case, because there is a documented case where they buried a woman and they had the funeral. And as they were going to leave, they heard a baby crying. Very, very faintly. And they kind of was like, what the hell's going on? And then they realized that it was coming from in the grave. And so they grabbed shovels and they dug this woman back up. And come to find out, the baby was alive in there. Okay? That was crazy. But that wasn't a case of the woman being dead and giving birth while she was in the coffin. That was the exact same thing as coffin birth. Same exact process is taking place, to where the woman died, right, and expelled the baby. That's what everybody thought. Same thing. But come to find out, here's the twist. Okay, she wasn't dead. This is one of those cases where they mistakenly buried somebody who was alive. This took place before the time of embalming and everything as well. This is an old story. But this is a documented case that happened. They thought, when they heard the baby, that it was coffin birth. You know, the same thing that I've been talking about, where the woman's dead, gases expel the baby and everything. And they, oh my God, but the baby's alive somehow. They thought it was a miracle. But come to find out, the woman was alive too, which was nuts. And she had, I guess, fallen into a coma or something, and her breathing was so shallow that they didn't realize she was still alive, and they buried her alive. And she actually gave birth while she was buried in the coffin. And they heard the baby, and that's what saved her and the baby's life, which is a crazy story. Imagine that. Imagine being born, and I guess you wouldn't remember, but for that moment, it would be pretty terrifying, being born, and it's just like, what the hell's going on here? You're inside of a coffin, and everything's dark, and you can't figure out what's going on, you know? Imagine being the mom, or imagine just being you, and waking up, like getting sick, and going into a coma or something, and then waking up, and you're in a coffin. And like you're all boxed in, and it's dark, and you kind of move, and you're like, what the hell? And you feel the lid of the coffin, and you realize that you're buried alive. That would be horrifying. I guess in today's time, it really couldn't happen because they have embalming and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, they're filling you full of all kinds of liquids, and they're taking your organs out before you're buried and all that. So I guess you're not going to be alive and buried anymore. But back in the day, that was a real thing that happened to people. A lot of times in the graveyards, they would have bells by the tombstone, and they would have a string attached to that bell that went down into the casket sometimes. That way, if somebody was accidentally buried alive, they could pull the string, which would ring the bell and let the people at the graveyard know, hey, this person's still alive in there. So that tells you that it must have happened quite a bit if that's a thing that they did. If they said, well, you know what, we ought to put a bell up here with a string down there to make sure. You know, you don't have that thought unless it's happened quite a few times to somebody. You know, that has to be something that actually took place quite a bit back then. You know, I can only find the one documented case of an actual birth taking place after being buried alive. That was crazy. But this coffin birth thing is a real thing. Now, the only way it happens nowadays is if you get in like an accident or you're murdered or something like that, and nobody finds the body. When that happens, then, you know, there will be coffin birth, although you won't be in a coffin, but the baby will come out if you're pregnant. It actually happened in modern times, believe it or not, in the Lacey Peterson case. I don't know if you guys remember that. Scott Peterson, her husband, killed her. She was like 8 months pregnant when he did, and he dumped her in the river. And when they found her body, the baby wasn't there anymore. and they couldn't figure out what happened to the baby. They thought maybe he had done something with it or whatever. And then they found it like a mile downriver, to where underwater it had been forced out through the gases and everything, that same process. And it had went a mile down the river before it kind of ended up back on the bank or something where somebody could find it. That's kind of crazy though. So that's happened before. And there's also been a situation where they hung a woman who was pregnant, and they left her up, hanging there as like a message to other people. And she had two babies pop out. So I guess she was carrying twins. And she hung up there for a while, and two babies kind of fell out. So you had that situation happen again in modern times there. But that's really the only way it happens nowadays. So I guess that's a good thing. You know, I'm very happy about the idea that I'm not going to have to be waking up inside of a coffin one day saying, "Oh shit, I'm buried alive. This is not good." You know, I don't think I'm going to be buried anyway. I think I'm probably going to be cremated. I told my wife I don't care. I don't give a damn what you do with me. You can cremate me, you can bury me, you can throw me out in the yard. I really don't give a shit what happens to my body after I'm dead, because I'm dead. You know what I mean? But most likely I'll be cremated, because I think she wants my ashes, like, to put in a urn or something to have. So imagine that, waking up and you're in the oven. That would suck, man. So anyway, that's the story of the Felicity Marmaduke, the lady who got pregnant by a corpse that turned out to be not true at all. And then I wanted to touch on the coffin birth as well, because the coffin birth thing is something I found doing the research for the show to see if this other story was true. I kind of stumbled upon the coffin birth, and I kind of took a sidetrack, which, you know, it's good. I've been off for a couple weeks taking care of my wife from the surgery. So I had time on my hands, you know, while she was napping and sleeping and stuff. So I've been researching this stuff, trying to figure out if this story was actually true before we did the show. And so I had plenty of time to take that side exit and find out all about coffin birth, which is something crazy that I never knew even existed. You know, I'm an old man, and for me to still be learning stuff at this age that I never even heard of before is awesome. I love it. I love to learn stuff. So I'm going to throw over to old boy and see what he thinks about the case, and see what he thinks about the coffin birth thing as well. So go ahead, brother.
Good evening, guys. So, this is a weird one. This is a little different. We haven't done something like this. So it kind of caught me off guard since it's been a couple weeks. So, yeah, I've heard stories of that. I know you remember he wasn't gone, but he was basically brain dead. And Forrest Gump, remember, she ended up having a kid with that guy that was in a coma. He basically was dead, other than they were keeping him up. So I mean, that's a technicality. That could happen because he was still alive. Yeah, I don't believe dead bodies can get you pregnant. Now the other one with the coffin babies, because yeah, I've heard of that. That's why they really do have bells, because we do paranormal, and we read before that back then they used to, somebody got stuck, they would ring the bell so they wouldn't be gone, and they still kind of do it as a traditional thing. Just as I've seen it before on graves when I do, you know, investigations in graveyards, and I know what he's talking about. So he's right about that. It's very interesting he brought that up. Because I forgot about that for a long time. I haven't even probably talked about that in 10 years since I've been doing paranormal. Probably about 11, 12 years I've been doing paranormal, so, or a little more, maybe. Off and on, 15 years actually. But no, I don't believe that she had a kid with a dead corpse. I believe you can if they're on a machine or something like that, because they're kept alive, so they're technically alive. In reality, they're brain dead, so they're half dead. But that's a whole different story. But I don't believe that. I think that's another bullshit story from wonderful TikTok and social media. You know, because in 3 weeks we're going to have aliens come. Now it's 3 weeks or January. What's the other one? Now AI is coming, so now people are doing everything they can to make Bigfoot real. And one guy had to. What was funny is, I don't know if you guys have been seeing it, has like a guy with a head of Bigfoot. He said it's real and it's so stupid, but people are going with it. And that's why we're talking. It still makes sense of what we're talking, because it's another bullshit story. Now, the other one That I've heard of that. We've done stories, I think, on that. They thought the mother was dead and wasn't, and the baby still came out. I do believe that can happen. I've heard of stories where people have been deceased and they still have a baby. That's what he was saying. I do believe that, and I believe those stories. But I'm going to tell you something. The TikTok's getting outrageous now, guys, and I don't know what to tell you. I mean, especially with AI now, how people are using that. They're so addicted to it, and I think that's kind of funny because you guys don't know what you're really playing with anymore. We're asking for it. We really are. You better hope nothing comes in 3 weeks to a month, because it's not going to be anything you're going to like. If it's true, because people are talking about it. I don't think it's just a rumor anymore on that whole. We're talking about stuff online. I actually trip out when people make these stories up about, like, that girl that had a kid with somebody that passed away. That's not the first time. I think they made that a movie. I think I saw a movie about that. About somebody doing that, not just with, we all know Forrest Gump, but that he wasn't technically dead. Now, if you've seen, like, Dawn of the Dead, like, you see the girl has the baby and the baby's a zombie, and then there was some that, like, they had the baby even if they were a zombie and the baby wasn't a zombie, they had the cure. So, because they got immune from having, actually, that's probably going to be more probable that would happen, is the baby is not going to be a zombie. It's going to be immune to the zombie virus, probably. That's a thought I never thought about, man. We're talking about babies, and I brought up, dead people. So this is not really one I can really talk for hours on, because I really don't know any other stories. I mean, I know stories of people having babies when they're dead. I've heard that in movies and stuff like that, but this one was kind of different. Kind of caught me off guard, guys. Like, I really didn't know what we were doing for the first 20 for the last hour or so. I was like, well, we'll try. We'll see what we can do with it. But this is something we don't usually talk about. I don't know a lot about. I've heard stuff about it, but it's an interesting story. I mean, what would you guys do? Let me ask you a question in the comments. So we'll go here. And this is to females, because men, well, I'm sorry, somebody's gonna get mad about that. You know what I mean? Whatever you identify to us. But imagine if you were down in there and you were just in a coma, like the zombie thing. Remember how the zombie powder can make you do that? That's happened. Talking about stuff where people thought that they made their heart rate slow down so bad it made them look like a zombie. And then they actually did make them feel like a human zombie, and they came back from the dead. And they weren't dead, though. They were just put in a coma by the blowfish poison and some other stuff they put into it. What if that was you? What if you were locked away and you were pregnant and you found yourself, and the baby, your baby woke you up having it. The pain brought you back, and you woke up and you're covered. People can hear you, and you can hear them digging as fast as they can so you don't suffocate you and the baby. What would you feel? How would you feel? Helpless? Terrified? Morbid? Insane? Worried that this is your last moments? They're not going to save you in time? That's going to make you even breathe a lot harder. What would you do? Tell us what you would do in those situations. We would love to hear your comments. I'll tell you what I'd do. We're going on this subject. If I was having a baby, I don't know, I could say that, and I'm not really there, but I do know that I would have to stay calm, because that's the more oxygen you use. Because you only get, if you're in a coffin, like, say, a basic coffin, even if it's vented, you probably have a couple hours. And the baby's in there, so it's taking up more oxygen now. So it's probably going to get about an hour or two. Hopefully they can dig you out in 20 minutes, because they can now, because they've probably just use a bulldozer. They'll do that in 2 seconds. They'll get most of that dirt up, and then they'll get you out. Before, it would have been touch and go. Matters how many people or how strong they were and how many people they have shovels. If more shovels, you probably would have had a better chance. But you had 1 or 2 people, you're fucked. You know, you're real fucked. I mean, I would probably just, this is my last moments, just reflect on everything. And hopefully I would be hoping they would, so they could save my child. Because that would be more important than myself. I want them to, at least if I die, the baby's smaller, so the oxygen isn't going to be as much. So if I die, at least they still have it. They could save the baby. That would be my first thought. I'm a different person. I don't care what happens to me. I mean, the only reason I do is because my family and stuff like that, my wife's. And I said Pearl because that's another thing I'll talk about in a couple minutes. But that's how I am. I'm selfishness. I don't care about anything really other than, you know, making people around me happy. Because I wasn't a happy person all my life. So that's probably what I would do. You know, the way I look at it, if I could save somebody, I'd probably save them. If I had to go to hell and I knew I could save somebody and have them go to heaven, that's probably what I would do. Some people can deal with pain better than others. And that's what I would do. That's a selfish act. You care about your baby and hopefully that they can save her. And if they do save me, then, man, I could grow up. I have seen my child grow up and probably help them better than I help myself or the situations I've been in. So that's probably what I would do. Whatever you guys would do, you could put it in the comments and tell us what you think and how your scenario would work out. I would love to hear it. So would James. This is a cool little show. It was different, and I was like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna attack this one because but this stuff actually, I can dig and I can relate to. I think we all would probably panic because it's just you wake up in darkness and you hear a baby crying, and you can't see anything, and you're stuck in like you're hitting a wall. You probably would freak out. I don't care what anybody says. That's probably what's going to happen because you're just like, where the fuck am I at? Fuck, I'm stuck. I mean, it would be a real bad scenario if you guys think about it. If you look at it and see how it is, it's kind of true. You wake up and you're like in a dark room and you don't even know what to do. Like you're, what the fuck? And you're crying and you feel down there and there's a baby there and you're all, fuck, what the fuck? I had the baby, so I have to survive. So, and then you hear people, come on, we're going to be there. We're digging as fast as we can. Get that fucking pitchfork. Get that shovel going. And that's what you hear. And you're hoping the fuck they can dig quick. And then you got somebody like James who's frantically trying to save you because I'm going to tell you he would. That's what he would have done. In that situation, what would you do if you're the person saving? You're going to dig as fast as you fucking can because you got people to save. And you're not going to think about yourself. You're thinking about helping somebody. And if you go with, then at least you saved 2 people. And you lost a life, but you saved 2. So I don't think that's a bad trade. But that's what I would do. People said, why? Why do you care about people? Like, well, I hope somebody would help me if they were in trouble. If I was in trouble, I hope somebody would help me. If they don't, I wouldn't be surprised, but I would help somebody if they needed it. I've done it before. I help people all the time. Me and James help a lot of people, especially with charities and stuff. I mean, we both spend a lot of money helping people. So does my wife's, so does his. We help people, and that's what you're supposed to do. And I could see James doing that. You know, that'd be a good book, bro. We could get some kind of book on that.
I always hear these stories about those women that give birth and they don't even know they're pregnant. Imagine being that woman. You wake up in a coffin. You didn't even know you were pregnant, but you hear a baby. Now, first of all, you're going to be scared to death and freaked out because you're in a coffin, right? You're buried alive. But then you hear a baby crying. And how's that going to affect your psyche? Because I guarantee you probably right away you're not going to be like, oh my God, there's a baby in here. I got to save this baby. Like, you're going to be full panic mode, freaked out, buried alive. You're going to hear some creepy ass baby crying. You don't know you're pregnant. So you're going to be like, the hell? Somebody put a baby in here? Some little evil baby trying to eat my brain or something while I'm locked, down in this coffin? It's going to be like a horror movie, man. It's going to be horrifying at first. And then when you don't die right away, you're going to be like, oh my God, there's a baby in here. It'll come to you, I'm sure, within minutes. You know what I mean? That the baby's not a threat. But I guarantee you, when you first hear it, you're going to think back to all those movies you watched with them creepy ass kids that are like chasing after you and killing you. You're going to be like, oh shit, I'm in it now. You know what I mean? But then once you realize, oh my God, there's a baby in here with me. Whether you know it's your baby or whether you're one of those ladies that didn't even know you were pregnant and you've given birth. And either way, I think is going to be just as bad almost, because you're going to be like, I got to do something. And the helplessness that you're going to feel in that situation. Because see, a lot of people would be like, well, I would start punching the top of the coffin, kicking it, trying to get out. What you don't realize, you can't. I mean, it's freaking right there. I mean, you can't move. You can't get enough leverage to strike properly to make any kind of damage to the thing. And even if you did, like today's coffins are way tougher. You know what I mean? So you're not getting out of it. But let's say you're in one of those old pine boxes from like the Wild West days or something. Even if you manage to break it somehow, you can get yourself to where you can somehow strike it hard enough to break it, which you're not going to be able to do because you don't have room. But let's say you do somehow miraculously do it. Maybe you're a midget or something and you're able to jump up and do somersaults and kick it or some shit, right? And you actually break it. Then you're even screwed more, because then all the dirt's going to start coming in. You know what I mean? And there goes all your oxygen. So what you got to hope is you can take a deep breath, and if you can break it, you can start trying to claw your way out. But how are you going to claw your way out through 6 feet of dirt? That's insane, man. That's like you better hope somebody's coming, because if nobody's coming, you're not leaving that coffin ever. You can't get out. You're stuck. And that situation is going to be terrifying, because on one hand, you're going to be like grateful in a way that you have an hour or whatever's worth of air. That's going to be cool, because you're not going to die right away, but that's going to be even more torturous if you think about it, because now you got to lay there and think about, I don't have much air left. I'm going to die in here if somebody doesn't come. And you're not going to be able to sit there and remain calm and strategically think and try to plan and all that. That's what we all think we would do and what we hope we would do, but I doubt anybody's going to actually do that. I think you're going to scream and rage and cuss and scream and cry and freak out. You know what I mean? That's pretty much what everybody's going to do in that situation. It would be a terrifying, terrifying thing. The hard part would be to be able to write it in a way to where it keeps your interest for a whole book, because you're just in that coffin. There's no other characters. It's just you and the baby in the coffin. And so it's like writing a story in a phone booth or something. It's how are you going to, without anybody to talk to or any dialogue, or, I mean, you can have self-dialogue, I guess, talking to yourself, but that would be tough to write to make it maintain interest throughout the whole thing, But it is a good idea. It's a terrifying concept of being buried alive, and especially adding that level of having a baby in there with you is absolutely horrifying, because especially if you know it's your baby, then you're really going to be freaked and like, oh my God, I got to try to help my baby survive. If not, I think it's still just about the same, even if you don't know it's your baby, because it's still a baby. And most good people, normal people want to save a baby. Most normal people aren't killing babies. You know what I mean? I mean, we all know that there are people that are killing babies, right? I mean, let's not get like way into politics or whatever, but we know that there are people that delight in that. They're sick fucks. But most normal people that aren't crazy idiots aren't going to try to kill a baby. You know what I mean? And so your natural instinct, especially if you're already a parent, your natural instinct is, I got to save this baby, And I think that would make it way worse. If it was just me in the coffin, yeah, it would suck because I don't want to die. I'm going to miss the people I love, but it's not that bad, really. Yes, it sucks, but the way you're going to go out is through running out of air. You know, you're going to lay there. It's not like you're going to suffer a whole lot. You're going to start to get lightheaded and kind of confused and not really know what's going on. And you're going to fall asleep and not wake up. And that's how you're going to die. That's not the worst death, I can think of. That's not too bad. The time leading up to the death would suck, because you're going to go through the whole gamut of emotion. You're going to be scared. You're going to be mad. You're going to rage. You're going to panic. You're going to feel hopeless. You're going to freak. And eventually you're going to get to acceptance and you're going to reflect and you're going to die. It's not the worst, but when you throw a baby into the mix, now your child is there and your child is going to die there. That I don't think you ever come to acceptance on that. I don't think you ever get past the panic and the hopelessness and the freaking out part of the equation. I don't think you have a peaceful death in that situation. I think that's horrible. And I don't think that. All I say is you better hope that God's with you. You better hope that He sent some people with shovels to try to get you out of there. Nowadays, like you said, they'd have an excavator and they would just, and it would take, 5-10 minutes and they'd have you up out of there. But yeah, back in the day, man, when this could actually happen to you, and it happened to people. You know what I mean? It happened. And that some people laid in there knowing that they were buried alive and they never got rescued. So that this scenario that we're painting is a real scenario that actually happened to people. Maybe not that they had a baby in there with them, because that's a rare thing that happens after death. I don't know if anybody other than that one lady that we have a documented case of actually happened to, where she was alive and buried and had birth. But even just being by yourself, I mean, that happened to people. And that is horrifying that they woke up that way. And it makes me wonder, because not all cultures bury their dead. Like the Vikings famously, they would burn them on the funeral pyres. I wonder if that ever happened to Vikings, to where maybe they got knocked out in battle, hit over the head with a club or some shit, and they thought they were dead, and they wrapped them up and they, burned them, and then the fire brought them back, and they woke up burning to death. That would suck. That'd be way worse, I think, because that would hurt like hell. At least for the first 30 seconds or so, it would hurt like hell. Because then all your nerve endings get burnt up and you don't feel anything. You're just sitting there, oh, look at the pretty fire. You know what I mean? But that would not be a good way to go either. People that got burnt at the stake, that would be the worst way, I think. Worse than anything, because you don't wake up on fire like you're getting ready to be on fire. So you're tied there and you're sitting there watching these idiots come up with torches or some shit to light you, and you're like, oh, this sucks. This is fixing to hurt. That's got to be the worst, I think, way to go is that way. I wouldn't want to go by a shark attack either. Yeah, very painful. All right, so we're going to wrap this one up. I'm going to throw it back over to you, old boy, and you can go ahead and give your sum ups and shout outs and all that jazz.
Okay. I want to thank you guys for listening to the show. If you see the backgrounds, we're getting backgrounds made for us now. And I got 3 or 4. I can get it unlimited, but that's pretty cool. And we'll probably maybe even be making shirts. And I even have one for No Face, and I am working on a new book. That's all I'm going to say, and I'll talk about that next week. I'm going to end up doing a show about me, guys. I'm going to tell you something. Just so you guys, we're getting a lot bigger now, especially because of TikTok, and I do a lot on TikTok, and James has been doing stuff on TikTok. Fuck, James don't even really go on there. They know who he is. But I've been really doing a lot, and especially I have a house called the House of Ashes. It's my belief system. I have people who, it's not that we're not a cult. I have Christians in there. It's just people who believe in a certain way, or they just want to learn, or they want to talk about anything. It's open to all religions. I'm not like most people. I actually have it's like a John Wick. It's, the Citadel. Anybody can come in and we all kick in there and have a good time. But I have stuff made for myself, and I'm known now with that. But if you guys see me on TikTok, and come on my show on Thursday nights. I do it at 7:30 Pacific on my TikTok. You guys can come on live. James has been on there. We're also we're on God. I haven't talked about it for so long. We're also on Facebook. I posted on there too, so you guys could see it. We're on Spotify. Check us out, Staring into the Abyss. Check us out on YouTube, all James Hersey's YouTube page, and follow us. You guys want merchandise? Staring into the Abyss, teespring.com. You go there and you can get hats. This will probably be in the store because we could just add whatever you guys really want. And we could actually, if you want us to sign it, we will. I won't charge anybody. Just send it to us and we'll sign it for you. We'll sign our books. Whatever you guys ever want, just come and send it to us and you guys we'll sign it. I know I have a following because I have 2 wives. I have, how I am, and I do a show with a famous horror author who's a Christian, and people all trip out about that. But if you guys notice, we get along quite fine, and I like it that way. It's almost Halloween, so I hope you guys are all getting ready for Sam Hames or Halloween, whatever you want to call it, because I am. I got married on Halloween, so next week it's going to be my wife and our 5th anniversary. My wife just turned 50 yesterday. So I want to wish her a happy birthday, and I love you, baby, very much. That being said, I love you guys. Misfits, Sugarlays, Monster Lovers, Demon Hunters. I fucking love you, and have a good night, Misfits.
Yeah, I don't even really go on any kind of social media that much anymore. Like every once in a while, like basically if I'm in the bathroom or something, I'm scrolling. You know what I mean? Because everybody scrolls in the bathroom. But other than that, I'm just doing other stuff. I come on, do shows and everything. But I went on Old Boy Show on TikTok once. That was a weird experience, man. Very weird experience. I don't know how to do TikTok stuff, like the lives and everything on there. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. I've made some videos back in the early days of TikTok, just singing and acting goofy and doing weird shit, just for fun. Just for funsies, having a good time. But I'd never done a live before. So I go on to do his, and they tell me, this is how you do it. You got to press this thing and do this thing over here, right? I'm like, okay. So I try, and nothing happens. So I keep pressing it and pressing it. And then what ended up happening is I would actually go live, but the problem is I wasn't going live on their live. I would show up in random people's things that they were doing and just pop up in their stuff. And they're like, who the hell are you? I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And I'm just showing up in random people's lives in a little window or something. I don't know how it happened. I don't know how it works. All I know is I was hitting what they told me to hit, and it wasn't taking me where I was supposed to go. So I ended up backing out of all of it and restarting my phone and then going back in, and it worked. So I don't know what kind of weird mojo was happening at that moment, but it was a fun night. But yeah, everybody there was really nice and pleasurable to be talking to and all that kind of stuff. I had a good time, and that's kind of the message really to everybody is, I mean, there's too much fighting and too much BS going on. You know what I mean? We got to stop all the nonsense. I mean, it's always because I believe this and you believe that, we have to be enemies, and that's so dumb. That's not what Christ called us to do. We're supposed to love our enemies. We're supposed to pray for them. Yeah, we may not like everything that somebody's doing. It might be sinful. But that doesn't mean you hate that person. You love the person. You hate the sin. Anybody that does anything other than that, you're not following Christ, man. You're just not. I'm not going to say you're not a Christian because that's between you and your Savior. I got nothing in it. But that's not what Christ called us to do. We're supposed to love each other. Yes, you hate the sin. Yes, you have righteous anger. You stand up against it. Yes, all that is okay. But you're not supposed to belittle people and make them feel bad about themselves and hurt them and call them names and freaking fight and argue all the damn time. We're supposed to love each other. I mean, this is a perfect example right here. I'm a Christian. I'm a pastor. Old Boy is far from that. He's a freaking handful. But we get along great. We love each other. We're friends. I don't ever give him any crap. He don't ever give me no crap. Have I preached the gospel to him? Way more than he likes, I'm sure. And I'll probably continue to do it till the day he dies. Or the day I die. You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that we have to fight and hate each other. You know what I mean? He's told me a lot of interesting stuff too. It kind of works both ways. But if you go at it with respect for people, and you can have a decent conversation, then you're already ahead of the game. You know, because as soon as you start fighting and arguing, then the other person gets defensive. As soon as you start calling people names and doing that stupid crap, the other person puts their guard up. And once they got their guard up, you can't shake hands when you got both hands up like this. It doesn't work. You got to put your hands down to shake. So if you want to be friends, you got to chill. You can believe what you want to believe. I'll believe what I want to believe. And we can even talk about it in a civilized way. We're supposed to be civilized human beings here. We're not supposed to be animals. Some of y'all have forgotten that. And that's sad. But anyway, off my soapbox, that's my 2 cents. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. He's got his little no-face mask thing going on there. Appreciate you. Let us know down in the comment section what you think. As always, up to you to make up your own mind, and we'll catch you on the next one. Till we speak to you again. Love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you. So do we. Bye-bye.